Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. I have my Not Today Satan mug and a nice chai tea latte in here. Also apologize, Legend is playing with some toys over here, so if you hear random sounds, squeaking, something, that's him. It's probably just gonna be a fact of life in my videos from now on that there's a squeaky toy in the background, but he's worth it, so. So today's video is going to be all of the books I read in November, aka my November reading wrap up. All right, well, let's just get into it. So the first book that I finished in November was Kingdom of the Cursed by Carrie Maniscalco. Now, I did a whole video on this, so I'm not gonna stay on this book too long, but I really enjoyed it. I really loved Kingdom of the Wicked, and I felt like this one was even better than Kingdom of the Wicked. Kingdom of the Wicked had some random issues or like things that were just kind of slow going. The story kind of picked up where I thought the last one was gonna be. So I really enjoyed this. I gave this 5 stars. And if you're curious on my thoughts, I do have a spoilery book review and chat about this book, and it's posted and I can link it down below. But this was the first book that I read and I loved it. The next book that I finished in November was Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. I'm also not gonna go into this book a whole lot because I just filmed a book review for this. So that will be coming soon, but I did really enjoy this. I had a really good time with it. I did give it 3 stars because there were some parts of this that I was just it took me a while to get into it and to understand where the story was going, but overall it was really good. And basically this is a retelling of The Goose Girl, but this book is following the perspective of the evil villain Maid. And it was done very well, and if you're curious about that review, I'm not sure if that review will be up before this video, but if it is, I will link it down below. So I also read this. This video is gonna be short. I'm gonna be flying through it because of reviews that I have up. The next book that I read was The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski. I feel like I butcher his name all the time, but anyway. This is the first book in the Witcher series, but it's like the first book of short stories before you actually get into the novels. And because it was going to be short stories, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about it. Obviously, I've watched the first season of this show, so I know a lot of the short stories. And I remember that being really confusing, and so I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the book. But I actually really liked it. I had a fun time with it. But obviously, because it is a bunch of short stories, there's not like a continual timeline or plot. But the individual stories I thought were really enjoyable. I really liked reading this. I actually listened to most of this on audiobook, and that was really fun. I would recommend it if you can get your hands on it. And I thought, just because it is short stories and it's like epic fantasy, I thought I was gonna be just a little bit bored, but I wasn't, and it was a good time. It's a lot less, the book is a lot less confusing than the show was, for me at least. So I'm excited to be able to get into the storyline of The Witcher now. I know there's another book of short stories, but I think I'm just gonna go into Blood of Elves at this point. But I enjoyed this more than I thought I was going to. It made me excited to get into Blood of Elves soon. I'm on the wait list for Libby for the next one to listen to, Blood of Elves, so I'm excited about that. And yeah, overall enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. I gave this 3 stars. And curious to see where it's gonna go. The next book that I finished in November was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. And I've talked about this before, that I was over halfway done with this book before November started, so I went ahead and finished it. I really enjoyed this book. It was very different than what I usually go for and what I usually enjoy. However, V.E. Schwab just does a great job of storytelling and setting up different worlds and giving you a reason to root for characters, or just giving you a story that you want to continue and you want to finish and see what happens. I really enjoyed this. I've done a terrible job at talking about the books, the synopses of the books in this video, but if you don't know what this book is about, basically it's following Addie LaRue, and she makes a deal with the gods that come out after dark because she wants to escape this arranged marriage, and in doing so she is cursed and no one will remember her. And she also lives forever, so she's living forever and nobody will ever remember her. I really liked this book. I thought it was really well done. I really liked Luke and Addie and the other characters, but Luke was a very interesting character, and all the way that they go back and forth in the timeline was really interesting. I think V. Schwab loves to go back and forth in timelines, but that's something that I appreciate. It's not something that trips me up or I dislike, so I enjoyed it. The book in itself tackles a lot of interesting issues, like, do you exist if nobody can remember you? And problems you would never think about encountering in your life because people remember you. It was really interesting how V.E. Schwab was able to write about that and delve into those situations and scenarios that made you think, and it's kind of scary at times. It also kind of brings morals into question, like stealing and different things, and if nobody notices or nobody knows it's you, is it wrong? And I really liked the dialogue with that and how it brought in a lot of things for you to think about. So that was really interesting. And the way it ended, I feel like she could continue if she wanted to. I know she's come out and said that she does not want to continue this. She wants to leave it as a standalone the way it is. But I think the way she did leave it off, she could potentially. I don't think she should though, and I know that's probably an unpopular opinion, but I think if she continued, it would kind of mess up the story. And I think she left it off in a good way. But it was really interesting. I wasn't really expecting the ending. I was expecting the ending to a degree, but the attitude of the ending I was not expecting. So that was really interesting. This was a very good book, very well done. I understand the hype. I understand why everyone loves it. I think it's so challenging to write, and it was done so well. In this book, for me, and I feel like this is how V.E. Schwab is with most of her books, I feel like her books could be boring based on the premise or based on what's even happening in the book. I feel like it could be so boring and nothing would be happening, but it's never boring to me, and that is difficult. At least for me, it's difficult for me to not be bored in mundane tasks or mundane things in writing. Like if she's just going throughout her day, like say, like for instance, Addie LaRue's like going through her day, going to a coffee shop. That's hard to write and me not be bored. And I'm not saying she's the only one that can do this, but just for me, I'm usually bored when I'm reading those types of books. Even if everyone else loves them, I'm usually bored. I was not bored with this, and so I feel like that in itself is a feat. And I appreciated it because I was able to appreciate this writing and not get bored. So I really liked it. It was very well done. Again, I understand why people love it so much, and I also really like it. V.E. Schwab continues to impress me, and everything I pick up from her I really like, so she's probably going to be an auto-buy author from now on. And I did give this 4 out of 5 stars. I don't know why, but I struggle so much giving like 1 stars and 5 stars because I just feel like they have to fall in between somewhere. I do give 5 stars occasionally and 1 stars occasionally, but I struggle with that, so this is 4.5 stars. I guess that could change in the future if I think about it too hard and I really like it, but right now it's 4.5, which is obviously a very good score. The next book that I read is In an Absent Dream by Shannon McGuire, and this is in the Wayward Children series. This is the 4th installment, and this is following Lundy, who is in the first book, and it's following her world and her portal fantasy world in the Goblin Market. I really liked this one. I think it's Emily Fox. She said this is the best one out of the whole series so far, and I think she's stopped reading them at this point. But I agree, I thought this is probably my favorite one of all of them. It was really intriguing. I really liked the logic and the like learning what is fair value. It was cool to see the character wrestle with wanting 2 different things eventually and how you can't have both. And I just really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the world. I thought it was really interesting and intriguing. Shannon McGuire has the ability to create really interesting worlds, and all of them are very unique and different, and I don't love all of them, just like, you know, the kids don't love all of them, but this one was really good, and I really liked the message behind it, as well as just the world in itself of the Goblin Market was very interesting, and like logic and things like that, which I prefer more than the like chaos worlds. So this was really good. I gave this 3 stars, you know, it was good. I don't think any of these books would ever be like 5 stars for me, and that's nothing against them. It's just, they're good, I enjoy them, but they're not my top tier thing that I ever want to read. They're good, I enjoy them, I go through them, they're quick reads, so they're fun. I did like this one. I would say this is probably my favorite so far, but we'll see how they go, because I know that she's still writing them and they're gonna keep coming out, and I will continue the series. The last book I read in November was Gilded by Marissa Meyer, and I'm not going to talk about this book too much either because I also did a book review for this. If it's up before this video, I'll have it linked down below, but I don't know when it's going to go up at this point. I really enjoyed this book. It's a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, and Marissa Meyer is no stranger to retellings, but this is not in the same world as her Lunar Chronicles. This is more like medieval Germanic rather than sci-fi fantasy. I had a really good time with this. This was very dark and gloomy and gruesome and a different feel than the rest of her books, but I really enjoyed it. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is the first book in a duology. The next one should come out next year, and I cannot wait for it. I really want to know what happens. I'm very excited. I'm kind of like, because I just want the second book now. But Marissa Meyer is one of my favorite authors, and I will continue to read anything she puts out. So this was no exception, and I really enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. I suggest picking it up if it's at all interesting to you. Hey everyone, this is post-filming Katie. I forgot to talk about one of the books that I read in November. And as I was going through today and editing, I realized that I left it out. So I'm just gonna insert the clip here and talk about it now. So another book that I read in November was The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is the first installment in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. The Lord of the Rings is obviously a very popular and very well-known high fantasy. I would say Lord of the Rings is one of the things that kind of like started it all with fantasy. There's other things like that, but I think Lord of the Rings is kind of like what everything was built off of. And you can see a lot of reflections in that and other fantasy. So I just really wanted to read it. I've never read him. I read The Hobbit and I loved it, but I really wanted to get to Lord of the Rings. I finally was able to read The Fellowship of the Ring. I listened to it on audiobook, which was really fun, and I really enjoyed that avenue of reading it. And I liked it way more than I thought I was going to. And I know that sounds weird because I said I really wanted to read it, but that's just because sometimes with high fantasy, I can get bored when there's like a lot of just really in-depth descriptions or things of that nature. So I was afraid that I was gonna get bored and I wasn't gonna like it as much. I adore the movies. I watch the movies all the time. And so I was afraid that I wasn't gonna like it that much, but I was very pleasantly surprised. I really loved it. I enjoyed it so much. I gave it 4 stars, and I loved learning more about the story. Gandalf is my favorite, and he's still my favorite in the books. He's so sassy and hilarious and powerful and amazing. So reading about Gandalf is great. The parts of it that I didn't enjoy that much were the songs. There's a lot of songs just kind of thrown in for no apparent reason. I know that's a very fantasy thing to do, but it's not my thing. So I kind of like tune those out, which I was able to do because I was listening to the audiobook. So that helped me definitely. And I think that was the best way for me to intake Lord of the Rings. But I loved it. I'm very shocked that I loved it because I loved The Hobbit, and I know they're very different feels and vibes to those. Like The Hobbit is a lot more lighthearted and fun and kind of like short story-ish on their journey, whereas The Lord of the Rings is much darker, which in general I would like more, but I just thought it would be more serious and more detailed and I wasn't gonna like as much. But I liked it so much. I loved it. It was so good. I'm so glad that I like it because it's such a iconic high fantasy. I'm just glad that I didn't hate it. Very excited to get to the next couple of books because I love Éowyn and she's obviously not in the first book. Very excited to get to characters like that. And for those of you that for some reason thought that I couldn't have an opinion because I haven't read Lord of the Rings about fantasy, I've read the first one. I'm a quarter of the way there. I don't know if any of you think that. I just know that that has been comments on other people's channels in the past and booktubers in the past, is they're like, well, you haven't read Lord of the Rings, so you can't have an opinion. I've read The Fellowship of the Ring now, so I'm a expert. Just kidding. It was a really good time. It was really interesting getting more of the story and random bits of information, like how long it took Frodo to actually start his journey with the ring. Also, the lack of like urgency in a lot of the characters in the first part of the book was really interesting and kind of frustrating for me, but it is what it is. I also then, after I finished reading Fellowship of the Ring, we watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy extended editions like all Thanksgiving weekend, and it was excellent. So yeah, I really enjoyed that book and I was glad I got to finally read that. So that's my little pop-in update. Peace. I feel like I flew through those books because a couple of them I have book reviews filmed that I'm going to be putting up, so I didn't want to get into them too much. And some of them it's like continuations of series or things that people know about, like The Witcher. People are very familiar. So sorry if I just blew through that, but it was a good reading month. Hopefully I can get a lot of stuff read in December and finish out my reading year with a bang. Looking forward to the videos that I want to make for 2022 and looking at like anticipated releases and some other things. So if there's any videos you would like to see in 2022, please comment down below and let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts and love to hear what you would like to see. Hopefully you guys had a great reading month in November and a great Thanksgiving if you celebrate. Oh, I meant to tell you, so I have this shirt from Wicked Whimsy. I love Wicked Whimsy. And it says morally gray is my favorite color. Yes. I love morally gray characters. All of you have to know that by now. You have to know that by now. My goodness. Morally gray are my favorite characters by far, for sure. All right, everyone. Well, that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.